quite a lot going on in Texas as we head into the midterms, with congressional hopefuls at the state and federal levels fighting for their chance to represent the people of the state, and it will be a fight. By now, we're all very familiar with Governor Greg Abbott's attempts to rig the voting map here in Texas, gerrymandering Democratic districts into oblivion because Donald Trump asked him to find 5 more Republican seats. Republicans are trying to fortify their hold on Congress, and for some reason, they are unsure that they will be able to do so if they just run on policy and principles alone. So here they are rigging the map in the middle of a decade instead of just actually trying to represent and support the will of the voters. So the Texas Democrats have fled the state in a strategic move, denying quorum to the governor, preventing him from moving forward with his rigged map. An interesting side effect of all of this is that the nation is now becoming acquainted with some of the state-level representatives that we here in Texas are already very familiar with. With the increased national profile, some of them are considering bids to represent Texans at the national level. And I don't mean to suggest that they weren't already considering runs for DC prior to all of this. Many of them were. The most notable is perhaps James Talarico, who is no stranger to the national spotlight. He's made national headlines plenty of times prior to this gerrymandering fiasco by being a Christian Democrat who is outspoken against Republican attempts to force-feed Christianity on a secular public.
What is the 4th commandment?
Keep the Sabbath.
Part of keeping the Sabbath holy is not working on the Sabbath?
That is, yeah.
What day is the Jewish Sabbath?
It is on Saturday.
And what day is it today?
It is Saturday. Here we are.
The Christian Sabbath is what day?
Sunday, in honor of the day that Jesus rose from the dead.
And we're scheduled to give this bill a final vote on what day of the week?
It's ironic, isn't it?
Would you be willing to postpone your bill so that we're not breaking the 10 Commandments by working on the Jewish or Christian Sabbath?
I love that you said that, because
you're saying that you'd rather tell people to follow the 10 Commandments than follow it yourself?
It shouldn't be noteworthy that an elected official actually understands and protects the separation of church and state. But alas, here we are. So he's made the rounds on major news networks, including Fox News, and he is a bit confounding for the right because a lot of their normal talking points don't work with him. He's a Christian who knows the Bible better than most Republicans who claim to be good Christians do, and he's not afraid to use scripture in his arguments against them. And he's oftentimes successful in doing so, at least in the sense that he successfully dismantles whatever point they were trying to make.
We as a legislature are about to force every teacher in the state to post the 10 Commandments in their classrooms.
If they are donated.
Do members of the Texas legislature follow the 10 Commandments?
So again, this bill is about honoring our historical, educational, and judicial heritage with the displaying of the 10 Commandments.
The 9th commandment is, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." Are you aware of any legislators who have lied about anything?
That is, you know, there might be one coming up in a minute if you keep talking. We'll see.
The 7th commandment is, "Thou shalt not commit adultery."
Yes.
Do you think that members of the legislature should focus more on trying to follow the 10 Commandments rather than telling others to follow them?
Maybe they didn't have them posted.
I am, it is incumbent on all of us to follow God's law.
He's often unsuccessful in that even though he's dismantled their point and exposed their hypocrisy and their true motives in the process, they just do whatever they were going to do anyway. But in 2026, Republican Senator John Cornyn is up for re-election. While an obvious Democratic frontrunner has yet to emerge, Cornyn is already being primaried by one of the worst Texas Republicans, which is saying something, and that is Ken Paxton. Paxton is super MAGA, and he is running on the grounds that Cornyn is not MAGA enough, even though Cornyn has voted with Trump 99% of the time, and that is according to his own political ad that's been circulating on local news channels here in Texas. Cornyn is the less bombastic of our 2 Texas senators, and that seems to be working against him as he fights Paxton for his spot on the ballot. Now he's touting how MAGA he actually is, and he's even taken a front and center role in in the fight between the Texas GOP and the Texas Democrats supporting his president's goal of finding 5 more seats. It was Cornyn who asked FBI Director Kash Patel to help track down these wayward lawmakers. But we're on to his game. This local headline from the Houston Chronicle asks, has John Cornyn turned himself more MAGA to win his primary? Democrats say the guy they used to work with is not the same guy sicking the FBI on them. And even outside of Texas, The Hill reported Cornyn leans into Texas redistricting fight amid uphill reelection bid. Meanwhile, no obvious Democratic candidate for Cornyn's seat has emerged, and in Texas, a Senate bid is not something to approach lightly. Beto O'Rourke came dangerously close to taking Ted Cruz's seat in 2018, losing the seat by just a 2.6% margin, which is the closest the Dems had come to winning a seat in the Senate in 30 years. Now, friendly reminder that Texas had quite a few Democrats in office back in the 90s, including the governor's seat and in the U.S. Senate. However, in 2024, despite neck-and-neck polling in the months and even weeks leading up to Election Day, Cruz defeated Democrat Colin Allred by 8.5 points. And there's commentary and analysis to be had there. At the time, O'Rourke was considered to be one of the more progressive candidates in the nation, let alone in Texas. So for him to come so close to winning the Senate seat in Texas of all places, Republicans took notice. Even Ted Cruz acknowledged how lucky he was to keep his seat that year. Allred was more of a traditional Democrat, less progressive than Beto, less willing to shake things up, but he was a former football star, which people seem to like, and he was expected to be a palatable option for those who might have been apprehensive to vote for a Democrat. He was a safe option, and ultimately, he did not perform well. Cornyn is supposed to be the easier of the 2 senators to defeat, mainly because he's not as well known or as controversial as Ted Cruz is. He kind of just puts his head down and does his work. However, he still is a Republican running in Texas, and whoever the Republican candidate is on the ballot, they're just going to be more likely to win. Talarico, however, is reportedly considering taking on the task, and he seems to be as well positioned as anyone to actually win. Again, it would be a long shot regardless of who the Democrat is, but if anyone could pull it off, it would probably be him. It also doesn't hurt that Joe Rogan really likes Talarico. He wants him to run for president, let alone senator. On the possibility of defeating either Cornyn or Paxton, Talarico said this: if we Democrats in Texas can't beat Ken Paxton, if we can't meet the moment and organize people across our state and build a big coalition, then we don't deserve to win, Talarico said on the Higher Learning podcast on Tuesday, one of his many media hits this week. But I do think this will be a huge moment for us in our state. I do think we have a moral imperative to beat Ken Paxton, Talarico said, and I do think I have certain things I can offer my party, but more importantly, the state of Texas. But that's also a huge decision, a huge life decision. And speaking of huge life decisions, Talarico is relatively young. He just turned 36 last May. Maybe that could work to his advantage if he were to take on either Paxton or Cornyn, who are both white-haired elderly men. Cornyn is 73 years old, but Paxton is a more sprightly 62. Otherwise, firebrand Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's district was gerrymandered to hell on the new Republican forward map, so that will be a race to watch should the Republicans get their way. Also, Houston was heavily gerrymandered, which was expected. The state's always fighting Houston and Harris County because it's so blue here. In fact, Houston is currently down a representative in Congress because Sylvester Turner died and Abbott refused to call a special election for the 18th congressional district seat until this coming November. Turner died back in March. There are several Houston Democrats running for that vacancy, and honestly, if I lived in that district, I know who I would personally vote for, but there are several candidates in that field that I would be happy to vote for. It takes an awful lot of intellect, experience, and gumption to be a Democrat in Texas, because even with the best of the best, we are still up against gerrymandered districts, yes, but also voter suppression tactics designed and implemented by the state specifically to disenfranchise Democratic voters. I can't tell you how many highly qualified Democratic candidates I've seen running for office at the local level, only for them to lose their races to wholly unimpressive MAGA Republicans. That's just the the way it goes sometimes in a state like this one, which is why I don't fault people like Beto O'Rourke who keep running and losing. You just have to keep trying. And in between the time that you're running for races, you do your best to serve your community outside of elected office, which is what a lot of them do. All right. That is it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.